What's good, people? In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a custom hook from your own components and what your mindset should be when you're trying to do so right now. What's good, people? Welcome to Rock Codes. This is Rasheen. I want to help you code something awesome. So today we're going to be continuing from a project that we previously worked on in my last video, which I will try to link somewhere or in the description, where we built a quick little app that fetches some dogs from the dog.ceo API, which is a free API that just gives you a bunch of dogs. It gets that data, puts it into state, and it shows you some dogs. So what we want to do from here, as I alluded to in that video, is we want to, so that video was about breaking up ternaries, which a lot of times you'll see the weird ternary structures. Go check the video out if you don't know what I'm talking about. We've refactored into this more clear JSX, which gives us a few states to go off of to know how to render our data, our dogs. And what we want to do now is try to figure out how can we break this up into a custom hook, which is sort of an art. So in that vein, it kind of reminds me of a talk that I saw a while back about coding being like writing or something like that. I'm probably screwing the title up, but I'll try it once. I'll try to find that as well. Link it in the description. It's a great talk. But basically, it puts me in the mindset of like an author or a music artist, where sometimes you may have an idea in your head for a song or a book or a story or something like that. And it may come to you as a full entire solution or a full piece, like a whole song may just pop into your head, all the details, or a full novel may pop into your head with all the details intact, and you just vomit it out into content and distribute it. And sometimes that's how hooks work. You'll start writing your app, you'll start putting together logic into your component, and you'll realize, hey, I need this specific logic, and I know exactly how to abstract that away into a reusable custom hook. Other times, usually how it happens is you will create your app, or you'll create a component that does a bunch of logic, as we have here, and you'll realize, hey, this is a pattern or a thing that I need to use elsewhere, or that I can just pull out of here just to make this code a bit cleaner. And so you get everything done, and you see where the edges of this thing are, and then you start to kind of pull it apart and move things out into a custom hook. And this is an obvious example. This should be easy to break up. However, the concept or the mindset is what we're really trying to focus on here. One thing that comes up a lot with hooks before we get into this is that, they are reusable pieces of logic, but that's not all they are. You don't want to blindly just start building your apps by starting to build custom hooks. That can get very weird unless you get an idea for a hook that stands on its own and you fully understand the edges of that abstraction or of that logic. Don't start doing that. Just build your app as usual. Use the standard React hooks, like use state, use effect, use reducer, whatever. And then after the fact, you can look and say, well, this would be better if I pulled it out as a custom hook. Also, on the flip side of that, you don't want to only break out a custom hook just because it might be reusable. You may just want to break it out because it makes sense to do so, and it could clean up your logic a bit and make your code easier to reason about. So don't be dogmatic about this stuff. You don't have to make any custom hooks if you don't want to, and conversely, don't make everything into a custom hook. So we have these three states: loading, data, and error. Now, thinking about what our simple app here does, what is the point of this app? The point of this app is to display a list of dogs. That's really the only part that we really care about. We don't really care about where the dogs come from. We don't even care if they're coming from an API or whatever. We really just wanted to show a bunch of dogs because dogs are cool. So we already kind of have the edges of this app here just should have some data that's dogs, and we can map over that and display them. we can probably get rid of 2 of these states. Well, actually, no, we can probably pull out all these states into a custom hook, because most of the work being done here is in this use effect, right? And looking at this use effect, it kind of stands on its own. It's just getting some data, setting the loading state, getting some data, handling some errors, and putting that data in the state and fixing the loading state. So we could probably, just looking at this, pull this use effect out. What I usually like to do when I'm going to create some type of hook or other abstraction is I start with how I would want it to work. So in this case, I know that all these states that we're using are probably going to end up coming from that hook. So for example, I would probably, and this is going to totally break everything, but just ignore the nonsense going on over there. I would probably want to create some type of hook where I will get the error, loading, and data from whatever the hook is. Let's call it use dogs. Okay, this is probably what I want. If I can do this, then I can pretty much move this out of here. I will still have my states here in my JSX to display in my render logic, and this would supersede using these standard React hooks. So let's try to create use dogs. Let's do it up here. Now a hook is just a function, so we'll call it use dogs. Do some of that. So let's see here. So the problem is we're doing this use dogs, we're redefining error and everything. So let's snatch these out of here and we'll just move them up. Keep in mind, I'm just kind of freestyling this, and I'm gonna follow the errors and see how it goes. So hopefully this will make sense. So at this point, I'm assuming that I have some hook, use dogs, that is going to return me an object with keys, error, loading, and data. This is actually object destructuring here. So in this hook, I need to return these same state variables, error, loading, and data. So now we can see that this no longer errors, but this use effect no longer makes sense here. So let's pull this whole thing out. This use effect is like, where's my set loading at? What did you do with my set data? Let's get this out of here. And we will slap it in here. Right? And look at that. It looks like it was really that simple to create this custom hook. Just by thinking about what do I want, which is just a use dogs hook that will tell me if there was an error fetching the dogs, if the loading state, if we're still loading some dogs, or if we have the data from the API, we can go ahead and render it. And this is pretty much how many of your hooks will fall together. Look how much cleaner this is. This is looking pretty nice here. This is a pretty standard approach. You also will see a pattern like this, I believe, with Apollo. If you've done GraphQL and used Apollo client, you'll have error loading and some type of data. But this is pretty much the pattern for creating a custom hook. You just identify the logic that doesn't really need to be there, and you pull that out. You pull all those standard React state hooks out into a function that returns whatever you actually need. So let's try to think about how can we modify this a bit. So let me pull up this dog CEO API, because maybe we want some arguments here. Maybe we want certain, like right now, we are specifically pulling a certain breed, the hound. I had no idea that's what a hound looks like, but yeah, these are all hound pictures, right? So we could actually add another state, or so let's Let's go ahead and check out the dogs API and see how can we make it so that we can actually pass an argument here. And we'll keep it simple. We'll just say that we're going to pass this hook a breed. That'll just be a string that represents a breed that the API supports. And we will use that breed here. And we can probably just do some good old-fashioned template string here. We'll do some of this. And actually, yep, that should be fine. So right now it's broken because we don't have a default. So let's do one of these. Default argument for the breed is hound. Boom. So now our hook can optionally take a string argument that gets used when we fetch the dogs, and that allows us to specify a breed. So what this means is we can go here and let's try to find another breed. Let's do a spaniel. Let's see if that works. The API supports spaniel. Yep. So just passing in the string. What are you mad about? It's never, oh yeah, let's get rid of that. We're not doing that anymore. So we can tell our hook, give us a bunch of spaniels. Pretty sure I'm spelling that right. Yep. And now our list is showing spaniels. Yay. How easy was that? However, what fun is this if we can't change on our interface what breed we want to show? So how can we do that? So what we'll need to do, if we have a piece of data that we want to be able to change that's going to affect the rendering of our app, that is state. So we need another state for this breed actually. So what we're going to end up doing here is adding another state for the breed. And we'll set the default to whatever was passed in to our hook. And we'll change this to default breed. And change this. So now we have a state variable that's the breed, but then we also have a setter for set breed that we can pass down to consumers of this hook. So now here, hope I'm not scrolling too crazy here. So we have our hook. We've added a breed state variable that has a default value that comes from the hook arguments. And we're using that to pass to the API to tell us what type of images we want to see for the dogs. Now, when we initialize our hook, we tell it what kind of dogs we want to see. And also we have an additional, here we're returning the set breed setter so that we can use that now in our top level app. How can we change it? Let's go ahead and add a text input or something. So let's see. Whoops. We'll just add an input. All right. So the value of this input, I guess we have the breed now, don't we? So we can actually return the breed in our hook, right? Initially, it'll be the same as this. So now our input that's showing up here, the value of that is going to be breed. You didn't see me look at my keyboard. I didn't just do that. Boom. So now we see spaniel here. All right. So we have our input and it's showing us the value of the breed that we've sent into our hook. Let me slide this on over so that you guys can see. However, we need to be able to call this set breed when this text input changes. All right. So what we want to do is have the text input that when we change this text, it actually will update the breeds that we're seeing on the screen. Usually you would just do an on change and then you do like handle text input or whatever. And we will create a on change handler, which gets the event. And then you do something like set breed to the value on that event target, which would be the value of this text input. The problem with that is every time we press a key in this text input, it will end up calling set breed, which would then be passed up to the state of our hook, which is going to try to fetch that breed. So if we type S, it will try to fetch for S, P, it will try to fetch for SP at every character. We don't want that. So what we can do is to just have a form that only calls set breed from the API level once we hit submit on the form. That's the route we're going to go here. So let's go ahead and add a button. It'll be a submit button. We'll just call it change. Okay, fine. We'll call it submit. Let's format this code up a little bit. We'll add a form. All right, so now this is a form. So instead of our text input actually calling set breed, we'll have to have a local state within our component. We'll call it new breed. And that will just be a use state that defaults to nothing. And this is what we'll use for the value of our text input. And when we change the value of that text input, we will call set new breed. All right, so now we can change this value, but it doesn't do anything, and hitting submit breaks everything because by default, a form is going to refresh your whole page. So let's go ahead and set a change handler here for our form. That's going to be for an on submit. On submit. Okay, fine. We'll call it handle submit. Seems to be the hot thing to do is call our event handlers handle. And our handle submit will call, obviously it's getting the event, and we want to prevent default immediately so that the page doesn't refresh. So now we can type some junk in here, we can hit submit, nothing happens because we are preventing that page refresh. All right, so what do we actually want to do once we hit submit? Well, we want to call set breed. And actually, okay, so one thing that we are missing here. So we know the breed that the hook is currently showing. So that could actually be the default value of our text input. That gets rid of that unused error here. And that makes it so our text input shows something that makes sense. The value technically is spaniel here. And then we're going to call set breed in our form submission. And it's just going to be new breed, which we know is stored in our state for the text input, right? So let's save this. So now we can see it's set to spaniel. That's the default we chose. Now we type in here, nothing happens. Let's set it to hound. We'll hit submit. It's loading and boom, got a bunch of hounds. It's very exciting. Super exciting. Let's try a different breed. Let's try Springer. Springer, submit. Boom. Hey, that looks like my dog Raven. Interesting, very interesting. Anyways, back to the point. So let's kind of quickly review what we've done here, okay? So we had a basic app that just did this fetching logic and displayed a list of data, in this case, a bunch of dogs, right? What we did was we pulled out that logic from our app. We pulled that into a custom hook called use dogs, which we're able to pass a default type of dog that we want to see. So then in our hook, that comes in as an argument. If it's not passed, it's set to hound by default. If we do have a default, that's the default breed we want to fetch, and we pass that on literally to our fetch for this API. Now this hook handles the loading state, the data, and the error state, as well as the breed. So we just return all that from our hook. That comes back to our main app where we're using the hook. So now we have these states available in our component, but we don't actually have to manage them at all, which is the beauty of a custom hook. So now I know that if I get an error here from this hook, that means it couldn't fetch dogs for some reason. Maybe they're not trained very well. And, you know, so, or we can tell, okay, well, we're still loading the dogs. So we can handle all that here. And then we also, in this case, were able to add a handy dandy text input, which changes internally in this component. And once we want to submit that to the API, we actually call the setter coming in from our hook, which actually hits the API. So this just gives us a way to really make our code clean and clear, separation of concerns, encapsulation, and all those other CS terms that really don't matter that much. But we're able to do a lot of things here that really spruce this thing up and make it look somewhat professional. So now we could actually pull this hook out into a completely separate file. What did I just do? We can actually pull this entire hook out. Let's cut that. We're going to import it from, we'll import use dogs from hooks use dogs. We won't get too fancy with that. Let's go over into our file manager. In our source, we'll create a directory called hooks. In that directory, we will create a file called usedogs.js. And we will drop this in here. We will export function usedogs. Obviously, we need to pull in everything missing here. So let's actually, since we pulled it out of this, we can actually just grab this import line and copy it on over here to our usedogs.js. Since we're not actually returning any JSX in this hook, which is usually going to be the case because you're returning state, which kind of defines what a hook is. Sometimes you return components, you can get fancy. In this case, standard, we're not returning JSX. This is not a component. We don't need the React import. So I've deleted it. We're using useState and useEffect. We're returning these state variables. We'll save that. We'll jump over here. We don't need useEffect anymore here, so we can clean this up. Let's kill the sidebar. So now we've imported our hook from a local folder and we're using it in our app and it still works just fine. Let's try bulldog. It's got to be a dog, right? Boom, bulldog. Why is it so big? Good Lord. Look at that guy. These are huge bulldog photos. Wow. Hopefully this was helpful in helping you to think about when and why you'd want to create a custom hook, how to think about going about it. You know, either it comes to you all at once and you just build a hook, or maybe you just look at your app and you realize, hey, this looks like I can pull this out into a separate piece. It doesn't matter if it's going to be reusable or not. Sometimes pulling a hook out is just because it will allow you to separate concerns. It'll allow you to test things better. It just looks professional to me. It shows that you know what you're doing. It allows you to reason about your code in smaller chunks. And that's it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you want to catch my further videos, subscribe, hit the notification bell, or you will probably still not see my videos even if you subscribe. Till next time, peace.